2, 1. Hey gang, and welcome back to Alien Protocols, the Advanced Protocols Data Project. I'm back with Ken again, and Ken and I have been talking about analyzing different videos in the past and analyzing stuff in general, and I sent him the basic stuff on the recent sighting that I saw. And we have, let's share our screen here, Ken, and I can bring up some of these images and just get your thoughts, your frank feedback on it. If you think it's a pelican, I want to know. I want your frank insights on all of this stuff. What were your thoughts so far on this sighting, what you've been able to study?
I think it's 100% genuine. You know, it's an unusually shaped craft. My first impression was that it was what's called a shoe heel craft. I don't know if you're familiar with that design.
Yes, that's a very old description
that
they used to have.
Goes back to the 50s. But I noticed there's two lobes on the sides that they look like they're intended for landing. So I don't think this is just a probe. I think it's bigger than that. It might be like maybe 20 feet across, something like that. I was very impressed by the fact that as soon as you started pointing your camera at it, it suddenly receded directly away from you. That's an evasive maneuver I've seen in other cases. The pilot of the craft saw you. He had you under observation, and he saw you pull the camera out. He thought maybe it was a weapon. You're trying to target him or something. So he tried to want to put some distance between you and he. So that's a classic maneuver. Maybe at some point he realized that you weren't a threat, so he hung around a little longer. But I've seen that before. I've seen probes keep people under observation, and as soon as they start pulling a camera out, the probe will recede in a direct line directly away from them, as though you had a straight line from the photographer to the object, and it just follows right away on that line. It must be, I believe a lot of these craft, the pilot has control, but there's a computer that can override his control at any time, because it can respond faster than his nervous system can. If it perceives anything in the environment that looks threatening, it takes control away from the pilot, and it starts running like an evasive maneuver program. In this case, this recession business was a definite sign.
Well, we can see that in cars nowadays. We've got cars that have those extra brakes with, and airbags and things that are sensors that sense something that's just happened or just about to happen, and they kick in now. So you could assume a more advanced technological society might take that to, the obvious, extremes, to have a backup computer control to make sure you're safe.
When you think about it, they wouldn't have something like this unless they were visiting a lot of planets like Earth. Where they don't have the capability to actually, chase the UFO and catch it, but they might have very fast, like ground-to-air energy type weapons, heat lasers and stuff like that. So you start pointing something at the craft, the computer the computer's constantly monitoring the environment independent of the pilot. That computer sees you make a gesture like that, it assumes the worst case scenario, that you are in fact targeting it, and it starts taking evasive action. So that they would have something like that. That indicates they're visiting a lot of planets like Earth that are kind of like at our level of development. They didn't come up with that because they're visiting here. They have to be visiting a lot of other worlds that are kind of more or less at the level we are at. They're just starting to make it into like space, near Earth orbits and little missions to nearby moons and stuff.
We've had 4 different people analyze this, and the 4th person has only given the partial analysis, didn't finish yet, but everyone has said that they believe the craft is under its own control because of some of the longer video footage. And that they can see this field effect around it. And it's not the classic kind of halo effect that happens with objects that in a bright day, if you have a dark object in a bright day, there is a natural kind of photographic halo effect that happens.
Yeah, that shows up a lot in videos. A lot of cameras have a built-in system where they try to do edge enhancement,
Mm.
and that can add haloing and stuff. But I don't think this is halo. This halo had some color to it. Okay.
Yeah, when I saw it with my own eye, when I came out and I looked straight up, I could see the halo and it was pinkish. It was a pinkish color, and I could see almost a matte, the opposite of glossy, you know, really matte, kind of metallic coloredness to the underside of the craft itself.
The fact that you saw it visually shows that it's not an artifact. What you were seeing is, you know, this craft has plasma dynamic propulsion, and all plasma dynamic propulsion systems on these crafts, they tend to emit either, if they're moving plasma, they emit cyclotron radiation, which can be in the visible region of the spectrum. If they're stationary, they've shut down, the plasma dynamic propulsion requires the craft project electric and magnetic fields out into the surrounding plasma layer. If the craft wants to just be stationary, what it'll do is the pilot can shut down the electric field. They're not projected. It's just the magnetic field. And when that happens, you get the ions in this plasma layer. They start kind of orbiting around the magnetic field lines. They emit another form of radiation called gyrotron radiation. But it's also in the visible region of the spectrum. So I think what you're seeing here, if it was stationary, when you saw the halo, it was probably gyrotron radiation. A lot of people don't realize that, you know, UFOs glow at night, but in the daytime, they're still glowing. Most of the time, you don't see it because the sunlight is so strong, it overpowers it, see? You just think, oh, it's a metallic hull. But if you could suddenly turn the sun off, you know, like switching off a light, the same object you're looking at would suddenly light, you'd see this glow, you know? So that's another sign that it's a genuine. I mean, you personally took it, and I think you're trustworthy, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not saying for certain, but I know for certain it's a craft. I mean, I still keep open the remote possibility, but I mean, everything in me rings, you know, I want to know the truth. I don't want to know a convenient fantasy, you know, I want to know the truth. And
there's no drone that could do that. You know?
And in the end, what's interesting, I've got the 2-minute chunk, and at the end of the whole video and everything, it's there, and then it literally disappears, and then it reappears again, disappears and reappears, and that's how it goes at the end. It was still sizable enough to be seen, but it disappears, you know?
What might happen, I've seen that effect before. That could be your camera's autofocus trying to acquire it, and when it's out of focus, it disappears. When it comes back into focus,
never even thought of that.
Yeah,
at the end,
doesn't necessarily mean that the craft is, turning invisible or whatever. I mean, it could be, but generally, I suspect autofocus.
Yeah, I didn't know, and as I was looking through it with a camera like this, I would, look with my eye, and at the end, it seemed like it was doing that, because it's not like it was just going away like that. You could see it. I'll bring it back to the 2-minute footage here, or this is the 45-second one here. You can see it in the center of the screen here. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in on this. Hopefully I can find a way to do that in the future. Someone else sent me a picture from this moment. But here you can see it's just staying out in one area right there for like, a full, over a minute. And at the very end, at some points it kind of tilts up like this, it looks like. It looks like to me, and it may be the focus thing that you're talking about. It disappears, then comes back, and then disappears, and then I kept looking, and it was gone. So that's how the tape ended. I hate watching UFO videos and you don't see the end. Like, what happened at the end? Did it zip off, or
Let's say I always like to say, how did it leave the scene? It's nice if they can get that on video, because how it leaves the scene can give you clues about the type of propulsion and stuff that it uses. I found the angle of this very interesting. A lot of times, if the pilot's looking out through a window, that window is designed to point straight ahead when he's in horizontal flight, right? If he wants to look at something on the ground, if he's looking through a window, a forward window, or if he's even looking through some sort of a camera that's mounted on the leading edge of the hull, he has to actually tilt the plane of the craft down so he can look at things on the ground. That would account for the unusual angle when you first see it, above the or near the stop traffic signal.
Yeah,
So,
and in that one video, which hopefully I can play again here, this really short video, it's like 2 seconds long, it tilts up like this, goes up, and then does that. So it's exactly what you say. If the pilot's here, that makes sense because they're seeing where they're going, kind of thing.
yeah.
Here we go with that one. It's high, you know, it's very small. I wish I could zoom in more. Let me see if there's any other way to zoom in.
I know.
No,
Yeah,
but
having a sighting like this is it's very, you know, you're very lucky to have this kind of sighting. And when you have it, it's like afterwards you say, gee, I wish I'd had a camera with like a 60 power zoom on it, you know?
of course. I'm sure though somehow, you know, there's more ways to bring out more data from this. You know, I've gotten 4 different perspectives on it, and everyone who sees it and goes through it basically comes back with the same kind of stuff, even if they start skeptically. And then I guess at the end, you just put it on a shelf and be like, well, that's a piece of evidence for whatever it's worth, you know? And I appreciate your feedback very much. You know, I've seen your feedback underneath video after video, and you really have a practical insight.
Yeah, I'm more the nuts and bolts theorist.
Well, you've written 5 books on the subject, correct?
Well, three on UFOs, one on
Yeah.
paranormal, and one on general science book. I'm working on one now that's good. It's going to be a blockbuster.
I hope so. I'm eager to hear about it. What's the new book you're working on?
Well, it's a biography of a man who lived. He was born in 1680, and he died in 1745. And he was like a craftsman. He was like a self-taught craftsman, and he came up with some really incredible inventions. And one of them, basically, he was building self-moving wheels that were capable of doing work, you know, running pumps and lifting weights and stuff.
Wow.
His story was gotten. I mean, Isaac Newton found out about this guy. Okay, Newton was getting letters from people in Europe telling him this guy's got something. It's incredible, you know. Thousands of people witnessed these things. They had official tests. They had people that were like mathematicians and professors and all this stuff from local universities. They all came and said, "This is we don't have." It's definitely something. He's got something that works here. We have the faintest idea how it works. Now he wanted to sell a secret. Okay. At the time, I think it was in 1711, the British government came up with a prize for anybody that could develop a way of accurately measuring your longitude in the sea, right? And a guy eventually won that.
What was his name?
Oh, Jesus, what the heck was his name? Harrison, John Harrison.
Wow.
Self-educated clockmaker.
He sounds like Archimedes almost.
Yeah, he came up with a very accurate clock. And it turns out as you sail west of London, you have the time in London with this clock. You've got this accurate clock. And it's got to be to within like a minute a day or something, right? And you can get your local time using a sextant, an optical instrument. And by taking the time difference, it turns out for every hour time difference, you are 15 degrees of latitude or longitude west of London, right?
Okay.
So this Harrison finally won the prize, but the prize was for 20,000 British pounds at the time, right? So this inventor that I'm writing about, he decided he wanted the same amount for his wheel, the secret of his wheels, right? It turned out that 20,000 British pounds at the time was equal to the value of a ton of gold. Okay, so but in today's money, it's about 10 million bucks, right? So needless to say, there weren't too many people who were in a position to buy this, and he got involved with this count. Okay, that this count was he was like the count of a principality in Saxony called the Hesse-Kassel. And the count was rich and all this stuff. And he said, look, why don't you come into my castle and build a wheel? I'll pay for it. and we'll invite all these people from all over Europe to look at it. Someone will buy it because they're rich, right? Wound up building a wheel that was 12 feet in diameter, weighed 900 pounds, right? And it was running pumps, and it's lifting weights, and it's running stamping mills and all this stuff, right? And he was always on the verge of selling it, and something would fall through, right? There was one example was he had Peter the Great in Russia, the Tsar of Russia, right? He wanted to modernize Russia. He wanted to have the schools and universities on a par with Europe, because Russia at the time, they were primitive, right? He had heard about the wheel from correspondence he got from this Gottfried Leibniz. He was like the top physicist in Europe at the time. He says, I am going to come to Kassel. If I like wheel, I buy it. He had the money ready to go, right? On the way over there, he gets a bladder infection, spreads up to his kidneys, and he dies from septicemia. So it's like one thing after another went wrong, and finally, people tried to talk the inventor. They said, "Look, why don't you take less money? Why don't we just give you like maybe 20%, and then you can get the other 80% out of future profits." And he said, no, I don't work it that way, because once you have the secret, there's no need to pay me anymore. You don't need me. And he said stuff like, I'll make a deal with you. I'll draw a line on the floor. You push my money to my side of the line, and I'll push my wheel to your side of the line. So as a result, the wheel was never sold. In 1745, the guy was like 65 years old. He was kind of really in a bad way financially. He was trying to build a windmill for this other duke or something, and it was an unusual windmill. It was a vertical windmill. They'd used them in the Middle East, but there were none like this in Europe. The blades, the plane of the blades was horizontal, okay, with a vertical drive shaft to the mill. He fell off the top of it one morning. They found him at the bottom, and he died a couple days later from internal injuries. And the secret of this guy's wheels has been lost for 300 years. But I have found it. I found a book he wrote, okay? And in this book, he has 2 portraits of himself. And I discovered that he put the secret of the wheels into these portraits. They're hidden in terms of the geometry. There are parts that are scattered around. If you analyze the angles and there's wording under the portraits. If you assign alphanumeric values to it, you can find the parameters for this wheel. And it took me about a good, I'd say, 10 years to unravel it. And it took over 2,000 computer models. I finally found what I'm very confident. I have computer models that work, and I'm going to publish it. And I think it should be of interest to those that
Oh, it sounds incredibly fascinating. There's a big mystery. Something's been lost for 300 years. You've put the pieces together. It sounds like a Da Vinci Code kind of a book and a story at the end. And this invention could have merits in modern society. Well, that's really cool. That's a really cool book. When do you think that will be done? You'll be finished with that?
Well, if the book is done now, I'm giving it a quick read through to check for typos and stuff. But yeah, I've always wanted to do something historical or forensic, archaeological in nature, and I think there is some interest in this guy. And unfortunately, the average person's never heard of him.
Well, you could help change that opinion by getting this.
Yeah, they've heard of Newton, right? And in the town he lived in before he died, if you go there, all the people say, "Oh, he was a big hoaxer. He was a big scam artist." Well, I have to show that no, he wasn't a scam artist. He had something that worked. And I have enough details about this so his inventions can be replicated today by craftsmen.
That is so cool. Well, that sounds like there may be interest in that device on several levels.
Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough.
It's nothing to do with UFOs or paranormal, but
It may be. You never know what that device could do. You never know. Well, I appreciate your time so much, Ken, and we're looking forward to the release of that book and appreciate your insights on this video. And we would like you to be our ongoing kind of science advisor to this channel, if you don't mind.
My pleasure. Like I said, I spent a lot of time studying this. I don't have all the answers. but I got a lot of the answers.
Well, you make a lot of sense, and we appreciate your time very much. Thanks a lot, Ken. Most appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, gang, for watching. We'll talk to you guys soon. Much love to you and yours.